You've been conditioned to believe that the universe is unimaginably vast, endlessly mysterious, fundamentally beyond comprehension, and that you, in comparison, are nothing more than a microscopic speck drifting in an infinite ocean of stars. A temporary accident in a cold, cosmic expanse. But what if I told you that narrative, the one you've quietly accepted as truth, is only a fragment of a much bigger story? What if it represents barely 5% of what's actually happening? Because here's something most people never stop to consider. Roughly 70% of everything that exists, every galaxy spinning in silence, every atom vibrating in hidden symphony, every thought that has ever flickered across your awareness, is made of something science cannot see, cannot touch, and still cannot fully explain. They've given it a name, dark energy, but naming something isn't the same as understanding it, and here's where it becomes personal. Your consciousness, the very awareness reading these words right now, might be intimately connected to that mystery. Stay with me. Let me ask you something honest. Have you ever looked at your life and thought, on paper this should feel like enough? The career looks stable, the relationships seem fine, there's comfort, security, routine. And yet inside, there's a quiet emptiness, a subtle ache, a persistent sense that you're brushing against the surface of existence but never quite touching its depth. As if there's a hidden dimension humming just beyond your perception. If you felt that, you are not alone, and more importantly, you are not broken. What you're experiencing is what I call the materialist crisis. We've inherited a worldview that tells us reality is nothing more than atoms colliding with atoms. That consciousness is simply neurons firing in electrochemical patterns. That meaning itself is a psychological coping mechanism, a story we invent to survive in an indifferent, mechanical universe. But here's what rarely gets acknowledged. That worldview isn't just emotionally unsatisfying, it's scientifically incomplete. The very science that once reduced you to a biological machine is now uncovering something extraordinary, something destabilizing, something profound. Quantum physicists, the researchers studying reality at its most fundamental level, are finding increasing evidence that consciousness may not be separate from the universe at all. It may be woven into the structure of reality itself, and that 70% of the universe, the vast invisible presence science labels dark energy, may not just be a cosmological puzzle, it may be a bridge. A bridge between the tangible material world you can touch and the conscious inner world you experience every single day. Are you ready to go deeper? Because what we're about to explore has the potential to transform how you see yourself, your potential, your power, and your place in the cosmos. Let's begin where things first became truly interesting. In 1915, Albert Einstein introduced the world to his theory of general relativity, one of the most elegant scientific frameworks ever conceived. He proposed that space and time are not separate entities, but interwoven into a single fabric, space-time. Massive objects bend this fabric. Gravity isn't a force pulling things together, it's curvature. It was beautiful, revolutionary, almost poetic, but there was a problem. When Einstein applied his equations to the universe as a whole, the math delivered an unsettling conclusion. The universe could not remain static. It had to be expanding or contracting. Yet at the time, the dominant belief among scientists was that the universe was eternal and unchanging. So Einstein made a bold adjustment. He inserted a term into his equations, a cosmological constant, a kind of anti-gravity force designed to hold the universe steady, a mathematical correction to preserve what he assumed must be true. Years later, he would call it his greatest blunder, because in 1929, astronomer Edwin Hubble peered through a telescope and made a discovery that shattered old assumptions. The universe wasn't static at all, it was expanding. Galaxies were racing away from each other at astonishing speeds. Einstein's equations had been right from the beginning. The extra constant seemed unnecessary, or so it appeared. Fast forward to 1998. Two independent teams of astronomers began measuring distant supernovae, exploding stars that function as cosmic lighthouses. Their goal was to calculate how much gravity was slowing the universe's expansion. They expected deceleration. Instead, they found acceleration. The universe wasn't just expanding, it was speeding up. Something invisible was pushing space apart faster and faster. a force permeating all of existence. In a twist of irony, scientists realized they had rediscovered Einstein's cosmological constant. But this time it came with a new name: dark energy. And when physicists calculated how much of the universe this mysterious force comprised, the answer was staggering: approximately 70%. 7 out of every 10 parts of reality consist of something we cannot directly detect or fully comprehend. Pause with that. Everything you've ever seen, every sunrise, every star, every human story is made of what physicists call ordinary matter. And ordinary matter accounts for only about 5% of the universe. Another 25% is dark matter, invisible material that exerts gravity but does not interact with light. And the remaining 70%, dark energy, the most enigmatic component of all. You are living in a universe that is 95% invisible. Let that truly sink in, because this is where it becomes deeply personal. If the cosmos you inhabit is overwhelmingly mystery, overwhelmingly unseen potential, what does that imply about you, about your consciousness, about the awareness interpreting this moment? Now listen carefully. When you first hear that you are composed of only 5% of the cosmic inventory, there are two natural reactions. The first is despair, insignificance, a sense of being cosmically irrelevant. When confronted with numbers like 400 billion stars in the Milky Way and 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe, it's easy to feel small. But that feeling of smallness rests on a misunderstanding. You've been trained to see yourself as separate, a biological mechanism moving through empty space. An isolated observer watching a universe that exists independently of you. Quantum physics suggests something radically different. You are not separate from the universe. You are an expression of it. Your consciousness is not outside reality looking in. It is woven into the same fabric as stars and space-time. Consider the observer effect in quantum mechanics. At the subatomic level, particles exist in superposition, not fixed in one state but spread across multiple possibilities simultaneously, a cloud of probability. But when a measurement occurs, when observation enters the equation, that cloud collapses into a definite outcome. Reality chooses. And some of the most respected thinkers in physics, Eugene Wigner, Roger Penrose, Andre Linde, have argued that consciousness itself may play a role in this collapse. That observation is not passive, it is participatory. Wigner once stated that quantum mechanics cannot be fully formulated without reference to consciousness. If that is even partially true, then something extraordinary follows. You are not merely witnessing reality, you are participating in its unfolding, moment by moment, choice by choice. Awareness by awareness, you are the universe becoming conscious of itself. And suddenly that 70% mystery, that dark energy stretching the cosmos, stops looking like a problem to solve and starts looking like an invitation. An invitation to explore the invisible dimensions of existence, the territories where measurement reaches its limits and meaning begins. The subtle interface where consciousness and cosmos may be intertwined in ways we are only beginning to grasp. So let me ask you something. Where in your life have you minimized yourself because you believed you were insignificant? Where have you dimmed your brilliance because you assumed you were separate from the greater whole? What if that assumption is false? Hold that thought. Because once we begin to talk about black holes, the story becomes even more astonishing. Now we step into territory even stranger. Let's talk about the most extreme objects we know exist in this universe: black holes. A black hole is born when a massive star, at least 8 times heavier than our sun, exhausts its nuclear fuel. For millions of years, fusion in its core pushes outward, balancing the crushing force of gravity. But when that fuel runs out, the outward pressure disappears, and gravity wins. The star doesn't simply shrink, it collapses catastrophically. It implodes past every known form of resistance. The core compresses beyond imagination into what physics calls a singularity, a point of infinite density where the known laws of nature break down. Around that singularity forms the event horizon, a boundary in space where gravity becomes so overwhelming that nothing can escape. Not matter, not radiation, not even light. Cross that invisible threshold, and from our perspective, you are gone forever. Or at least, that's what we once believed. In the 1970s, Stephen Hawking made a discovery that shocked the scientific world. Black holes are not completely black. Due to quantum effects near the event horizon, they emit radiation, now known as Hawking radiation. It is incredibly faint, almost imperceptible. But over incomprehensibly long timescales, trillions upon trillions of years, this radiation causes black holes to slowly evaporate. They disappear, and here is where the paradox ignites. If a black hole swallows information, every particle, every configuration, every bit of data describing everything that ever fell into it, and then the black hole itself evaporates, where does that information go? Quantum mechanics tells us something foundational. Information cannot be destroyed. It can change form, it can be scrambled, but it cannot vanish from existence. The universe keeps the record. Yet if a black hole disappears completely, it appears that the information disappears with it. This contradiction is known as the black hole information paradox. And it is one of the deepest unsolved mysteries in theoretical physics. Now here's where things become almost poetic. Some physicists, including Leonard Susskind, proposed that the information does not vanish inside the singularity. Instead, it is encoded on the surface of the event horizon. Like a hologram, everything that falls into a black hole leaves a subtle imprint on its boundary. And as the black hole slowly evaporates through Hawking radiation, that information is gradually released back into the universe. Nothing is ever truly lost. Pause with that idea. If even in the most extreme environment imaginable, under gravitational forces so intense that space-time itself tears, information is preserved, what does that imply about you? About your memories? About your experiences? About your moments of awareness? What if nothing you have ever thought, felt, loved, feared, or imagined is ever erased at the deepest level of reality? What if every experience leaves an imprint on the fabric of existence itself? This isn't mystical poetry. It's where cutting-edge theoretical physics is pointing, and it gets stranger still. Some speculative models suggest that when information falls into a black hole, the process might give birth to a new region of space-time, potentially even a new universe branching off from our own. A cosmic budding, a parallel expansion seeded by collapse, infinite universes, infinite branching realities, infinite possibilities. Suddenly, the question isn't only what happens to information inside a black hole. The question becomes, what happens to consciousness when it encounters the ultimate mystery? When awareness meets the edge of space-time, are you ready to go deeper? Because now we return to something even more intimate, the observer effect. At the smallest scales of existence, atoms, electrons, photons, reality does not behave the way our intuition expects. Particles do not possess definite properties in the way everyday objects do. They exist in superposition, a spread of probabilities, a cloud of potential states coexisting simultaneously. This is not philosophical speculation, it is experimentally verified. Consider the famous double-slit experiment. Fire a single photon toward two slits. If unobserved, it behaves like a wave, passing through both slits at once and creating an interference pattern on the screen behind, a signature of wave behavior. But the moment you measure which slit it passes through, the interference pattern vanishes. The photon behaves like a particle. It chooses one path. Observation changes the outcome. Now most physicists interpret this in strictly technical terms. Measurement disturbs the system. Interaction forces resolution, nothing mystical. But a minority, including some of the founders of quantum theory, suggested something more radical. Eugene Wigner argued that consciousness may be necessary to collapse the wave function. That without an observer, reality remains in superposition, unresolved potential. Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff proposed that consciousness itself could arise from quantum processes within the brain, that your awareness might literally be tied to quantum events unfolding inside neurons. And Andre Lind went further still, suggesting that the universe may not be fully separable from its observers, that consciousness and cosmos co-create one another. Let us be clear. These interpretations are controversial. Most physicists do not endorse a consciousness-based explanation of quantum collapse. But here's the undeniable truth. Quantum mechanics works with astonishing precision. The equations predict outcomes with unparalleled accuracy. Yet what those equations mean, what is actually happening when potential becomes actuality, remains an open question. No one fully knows. And within that uncertainty, there is a space, a narrow, luminous crack, where science and spirituality begin to touch. Think about your direct experience. You are a conscious observer embedded in a quantum universe. Every moment your attention rests on something, a thought, a sensation, a possibility, you are engaging in a form of measurement. Attention is selection. Focus is filtration. In the language of quantum theory, measurement collapses probabilities. What if ancient teachings about the power of attention, about focus shaping reality, about intention guiding manifestation, we're intuitively pointing toward the same underlying principle modern physics is wrestling with? Not because subatomic particles respond to wishful thinking, but because you are not separate from the quantum field. You are an expression of it, the field observing itself. When your consciousness aligns, when your focus, emotion, and belief converge coherently toward a possibility, you are not merely fantasizing. You are participating in the narrowing of potential into lived experience. This is where misunderstanding creeps in. Manifestation is not about forcing the universe to comply with desire. The quantum field does not respond to coercion. It responds to coherence, to alignment, to the observer embodying the state they seek. So let me ask you directly, what kind of reality are you collapsing into form right now with the quality of your attention? Because we are about to descend to an even deeper layer. For generations, we've been told that science and spirituality occupy separate territories. Science deals in objective measurement. Spirituality deals in subjective experience. Two domains that must remain isolated. Quantum mechanics shattered that illusion. Listen to the words of some of the greatest physicists of the modern era. Eugene Wigner stated that it is impossible to formulate quantum mechanics in a fully consistent way without reference to consciousness. John Wheeler proposed the idea of a participatory universe, that observers are not passive spectators, but active participants in bringing reality into being. Not only here and now, but across space and time. Freeman Dyson remarked that the more he examined the structure of the universe, the more it appeared as though the universe somehow anticipated the emergence of observers. Let that idea settle. Not destiny in a religious sense, not a scripted cosmic drama, but the possibility that consciousness and cosmos are interwoven, two inseparable aspects of a deeper reality. Here is the radical implication. You are not drifting inside a dead, mechanical machine that exists independently of your awareness. You are living within a participatory cosmos, a reality that responds to observation, to attention, to consciousness. And that 70% of the universe we call dark energy, the mysterious force accelerating cosmic expansion, may not be unrelated to the mystery of consciousness itself. This is not a claim that dark energy is conscious. It is a recognition that both dark energy and consciousness occupy the same category in our understanding, measurable yet unexplained, present yet invisible, foundational yet mysterious. Both reside within the unseen 95%. Reflect on your own direct experience. You know you are conscious. You know you possess awareness, intention, the capacity to direct focus. You can observe your own thoughts. You can choose where attention lands. And yet materialist science cannot fully explain why consciousness exists at all. Why should matter, arranged in a particular way, give rise to subjective experience? Why should there be something it feels like to be you? That question remains open. And in that openness, in that unanswered depth, the boundary between observer and universe begins to dissolve. Neural correlates of consciousness. Yes, of course. We can measure brain activity. We can map which regions light up when you see a color, recall a memory, fall in love, feel fear. We can track electrical impulses firing across neural networks. Absolutely. But none of that explains the experience itself. It doesn't explain the redness of red, the warmth of love in your chest, the ache of loss, the simple, undeniable sensation of being you here now aware. Science can describe the mechanisms correlated with awareness. It can observe patterns. But the subjective quality of experience, what philosophers call qualia, remains untouched by measurement. This gap has a name, the hard problem of consciousness. And it is every bit as mysterious as dark energy. So here is the stunning possibility. What if the reason consciousness cannot be explained by physical laws is not because we haven't tried hard enough, but because consciousness is not a byproduct of physics at all? What if it is fundamental? What if consciousness is not something matter produces, but something reality expresses? What if you are not a body that happens to have consciousness, but consciousness having a bodily experience? Pause with that inversion. Because if that is even partially true, if you are the universe aware of itself, collapsing quantum possibilities into definite realities moment by moment, then everything changes. You are not powerless, you are not insignificant, you are not an accident drifting through a cold void. You are a participatory force in the unfolding of existence, every thought you think. Every emotion you sustain, every place you direct your attention, you are shaping the texture of your lived reality, not someday, not after enlightenment, not when you become worthy. Now. So the real question becomes, what reality are you sculpting with the quality of your consciousness? Let's bring all the threads together. We began with a number, 70%. The proportion of the universe composed of dark energy, a force we can detect, calculate, measure, yet cannot explain. We explored black holes, objects so extreme that even light cannot escape them, and discovered that even they cannot erase information. Everything leaves a trace. Nothing is fundamentally lost. We examined the observer effect, the experimentally verified reality that observation plays a role in collapsing quantum possibilities into actual outcomes. And we arrived at a radical proposition. Consciousness may not be separate from the cosmos. You may not be in the universe. You may be the universe experiencing itself. Now let's make this practical. Most people move through life from a posture of separation. They believe they are isolated individuals inside an indifferent universe, trying to manipulate external circumstances to secure happiness. They hustle, they strain, they attempt to bend reality into submission. And when things don't materialize, they conclude that manifestation is fantasy, that the law of attraction is naive. But here's what's missing. You cannot manipulate a universe you are woven into. You cannot force a field you are an expression of. What you can do is align. When you understand that you are not separate from the quantum field, manifestation stops being about acquisition. It becomes about embodiment. You don't attract wealth as something outside yourself. You become the energetic signature of abundance. You don't manifest love as a prize to win. You embody the frequency of connection. You don't create success from scratch. You align with the timeline where success is already your lived experience. This is what mystics have been pointing toward for millennia. And it is what quantum theory now describes in mathematical language. Reality is not fixed. It is probabilistic. Multiple potentials coexist simultaneously. And the observer, your consciousness, plays a role in determining which potential becomes your lived actuality, not through wishful thinking, not through repeating affirmations while feeling doubt underneath, but through coherence, through alignment, through becoming at the level of being what you desire at the level of experience. Let's make this concrete. Imagine you want a new career. Most people approach this from lack. I don't have what I want, I need to get it. That state radiates deficiency. But the quantum field does not respond to lack. It responds to resonance. So instead of asking, how do I get this career? Ask something more profound. Who is the version of me already living that reality? How do they think? How do they feel? How do they move through the world? And then you begin to embody that. Not as performance, not as pretending, but as remembering. Because within a probabilistic universe, all possibilities already exist. The version of you living your dream career is not a hypothetical future self. It is a parallel probability, a branch of potential reality. When you align your focus, emotion, and action with that probability, you are not creating something out of nothing. You are collapsing the wave function in that direction. You are selecting from an infinite menu of possibilities. Manifestation stops being mystical and becomes elegant, natural, precise. But now we reach a paradox that stretches the mind even further. What if every choice you make literally creates a new universe? Not metaphorically, literally. In 1957, physicist Hugh Everett proposed what is now known as the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. According to this framework, when a quantum system exists in superposition, multiple possible states at once, the wave function never collapses. Instead, every possible outcome occurs. Each outcome unfolds in a separate branch of reality. The universe splits, and splits again, and splits again. Every quantum event generates branching timelines. Countless parallel realities where different versions of you are living different lives. In one branch, you took the opportunity. In another, you hesitated. In one, you said yes to love. In another, you walked away. Infinite versions of you, infinite timelines, all coexisting. It sounds like science fiction, but mathematically it is a legitimate interpretation. It resolves certain quantum paradoxes cleanly, and while debated, it is taken seriously within physics, so let's entertain it. If every possible version of your life exists somewhere in the multiverse, then the version of you living your dream life is not imaginary. It is real, right now, in another branch. The question is no longer, can I create that reality? The question becomes, how do I align with that branch? This is where consciousness becomes the navigator. If attention selects which probability becomes your experienced reality, if observation plays a role in shaping outcome, then you are not manufacturing new timelines from nothing. You are shifting alignment within an already existing landscape of possibilities. Every choice, every sustained emotional state, every repeated focus of attention. You are tuning yourself to a particular branch of the multiverse. This is the deepest layer of manifestation. You are not pulling external objects into your world. You are adjusting your consciousness to experience the world where those objects, opportunities, and relationships are already present. Think back to a moment in your life when everything changed unexpectedly, when a new door opened, when synchronicities aligned, when it felt as though reality rearranged itself overnight. What if that wasn't random luck? What if your internal state shifted first, subtly, and that shift aligned you with a different probability branch? If that can happen unconsciously, imagine the implications of doing it deliberately. When you understand that infinite versions of you already exist, when you grasp that you are not confined to one fixed storyline, when you recognize that your consciousness is the steering mechanism, you stop trying to wrestle your current reality into submission. You stop fighting the branch you're on, and instead you begin tuning yourself through focus, through belief, through embodied action, toward the branch that reflects who you are choosing to become. You begin aligning with the version of reality where the shift has already occurred, where the breakthrough has already unfolded, where the transformation is no longer a distant hope but a lived fact. You stop chasing change and you start embodying it. You become a timeline shifter. And suddenly that 70% mystery, that vast, invisible presence science calls dark energy, no longer feels distant or abstract. It feels like a playground of potential, an open field of probabilities waiting for alignment. So let me ask you directly, are you ready to explore which timeline you're actually choosing? There's a statement from Freeman Dyson that stopped me completely the first time I read it. He said, "The more I examine the universe and study the details of its architecture, the more evidence I find that the universe in some sense must have known we were coming." That isn't poetic exaggeration. It's a reflection on something physicists call fine-tuning. Consider the fundamental constants of nature, the strength of gravity, the charge of the electron, the mass of the proton. If any one of these values were even slightly different, and we're talking about fractions of a percent, the universe would be sterile. No stable stars, no complex chemistry, no planets, no life. The cosmos appears exquisitely calibrated for consciousness to emerge. Dyson's deeper point was this: any serious theory about the origin and destiny of the universe is incomplete if it treats life and consciousness as accidental byproducts. They may not be cosmic glitches. They may be essential features. Think about the scale of this. Dark energy is accelerating the expansion of the universe. In roughly 5 billion years, our sun will exhaust its fuel and swell into a red giant. In trillions of years, the last stars will fade. Eventually, according to current models, the cosmos drifts toward cold darkness. But here's the unanswered question: is that the whole story? What if consciousness plays a role we have not yet understood? What if observers, beings like us, and perhaps intelligences far beyond us, participate in the unfolding of cosmic evolution itself? This is not a claim that we control dark energy. It is an acknowledgement that the relationship between consciousness and cosmos may be far deeper than our current models allow. Quantum mechanics has already shown us that observation affects outcome. The observer effect is not optional. It is built into the mathematics. So what happens when billions of conscious observers are collapsing probabilities simultaneously, across a planet, across civilizations, across galaxies? What happens when consciousness becomes cosmic in scale? Here's the paradox at the heart of it all. You are both insignificant and essential. Insignificant in the sense that you are one human life within an incomprehensibly vast universe, a brief flicker in cosmic time. Essential in the sense that without observers, reality may remain unresolved potential, quantum superposition, unactualized possibility. You are the universe waking up to itself. Every time you notice a thought, every time you feel a sensation, every time you recognize truth, you are participating in cosmic self-awareness. And that 70% mystery, that dark energy we cannot explain, may be the canvas, the infinite field of potential waiting to be shaped by observation. You are not separate from it. You are immersed in it. You are swimming in an ocean of invisible possibility every moment of your life. When you align your consciousness, when you clarify your intention, elevate your emotion, focus your attention, you are not merely adjusting personal circumstances. You are participating in the evolutionary dance of the cosmos itself. Every thought carries weight. Every choice ripples outward. Every internal shift sends waves through the quantum field. You are cosmically significant, not because you are superior, not because you are chosen, but because you are an irreplaceable expression of the universe experiencing itself. And that realization changes everything. So let's ground this. How do you actually live this? First, stop operating from separation. The moment you think, I need to get something out there, you reinforce the illusion that you are disconnected from the field. Instead, ask, what version of me already embodies this reality? How do they think? How do they feel? How do they show up? And then begin aligning with that state, not as pretending, but as remembering who you already are within the field of possibilities. Second, treat your attention as sacred. Attention is creative power. Wherever you place it, you energize that probability. If you constantly focus on lack, fear, and limitation, you collapse those patterns into lived experience, not as punishment, not as cosmic judgment, but because observation influences outcome. Choose deliberately what you observe. Choose deliberately what you rehearse mentally. Choose deliberately the quality of your focus. Third, understand that emotion is the language of the quantum field. Thought alone is weak without feeling. When you envision a new reality, don't only see it, feel it. Experience the gratitude, the joy, the peace, the certainty as if it is already embodied. These emotional states create coherence, and coherence aligns you with specific branches of probability. Fourth, release force. The quantum field does not respond to strain or desperation. It responds to alignment followed by inspired action. Your responsibility is not to micromanage every detail of the unfolding. Your responsibility is to align your being and then respond to the opportunities that arise. Trust the intelligence woven into reality itself. And finally, remember this. You are not alone in this process. You are not an isolated ego trying to bend existence to your will. You are a wave in an ocean of consciousness, part of a vast dance between observer and observed. When you shift your internal state, you ripple through the field, and the field responds. That is manifestation, not control, not domination, co-creation, you and the universe moving together. So let me ask you something real. What reality have you been trying to force into existence? What would happen if you stopped forcing and started aligning? What if the version of you living your dream life already exists in a parallel branch of reality, and the only shift required is becoming the vibrational match? What if it's simpler than you imagined? And what if it begins right now with this breath, this thought, this moment? Are you ready to step into that timeline? Let's reflect on what we've uncovered. 70% of the universe is dark energy, measurable yet unexplained. Black holes preserve information even under the most extreme conditions. The observer effect reveals that observation plays a role in shaping reality. And the possibility of parallel universes suggests infinite versions of you may already exist. But here is the core message. You are not insignificant, you are not separate, you are not powerless. You are the universe observing itself, a conscious force collapsing infinite potential into the singular experience you call your life. And every moment you are choosing. Which timeline are you aligning with? Which version of yourself are you embodying? The quantum field does not respond to your words. It responds to your state of being. So before we close, pause. Take a breath and ask yourself, who am I becoming right now? Not tomorrow, not when circumstances improve, right now. Because this moment is the only place timelines shift. If something inside you resonated, if you felt recognition rather than persuasion, hold on to that spark. Let it guide your next choice. Let it inform your next thought. And remember this, the universe is not waiting to judge you. It is waiting to respond to you. The next wave of possibility is already forming. The question is, will you collapse it consciously? I'll see you in the next timeline,